All right, guys, we still have a few coming into the waiting room. I'm going to try to get those admitted as they come in. But we'd like to go ahead and welcome you to the drill, Becoming a Math NBCT with Suzanne Culbreath. I am Brad Lett, and I will be kind of monitoring the chat room and helping the presenter with any questions or helping her to facilitate, the presentation as she wishes. We will try to be engaging and informative. Even though we all must remain muted, please keep your camera on because we would like to see you. Be sure to ask questions in the chat, or if the presenter is okay with it, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. We'll kind of let her dictate that. We are recording this session so that you can view it later. I'm going to go ahead and post the attendance form in the chat. So if you will, please complete it so you can receive your professional learning credit. I'm also going to provide the links for Power School, as well as links just to the boot camp website and the boot camp bulletin board. So without further ado, Miss Suzanne Culbreath.
Thank you, Brad. I'm so excited that we have so many people today. And I'm really excited that this many folks are excited and interested in the possibility of becoming National Board Certified in math. I have no doubt that each of you are accomplished teachers. It's just a matter of getting all that evidence together and presenting it to the national boards. I am so excited that Brad is here with us today. And I am a EA, Early Adolescent Math certified in 2004 and renewed in 2014. So I spent most of my 30 years in the classroom in math and in geometry. So I'm one of those 9th grade teachers that had mostly 15-year-olds, and I am EA math. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, but I'm going to try my best not to be a talking head today. And notice in the chat as Brad is putting in those links. And so what I would like is to double check and make sure everyone is seeing my screen. Okay, I see some thumbs up. I see a thumbs up from Brad. Good. Oh, and guys, I'm totally fine with you unmuting and interrupting. I'm totally fine with you raising your hand under participants. I want this to be a conversation. I want us to be able to talk I want this to be as helpful to you as possible. So the first thing that I wanted to introduce myself. This is actually a session that Suzanne Bangert and I presented yesterday afternoon. We called it Suzanne to the Second Power, and enjoyed having some participants there yesterday. And you can see my email there and also my Twitter, and feel free to make a note of those if you would like. Also, I'm going to actually unshare, and so I can see everybody, and I want to take just a minute to get to know you guys. So what I'd like for you to do, and we'll just kind of, I'll call people as I see them on my screen. I'll let you unmute. I'd like for you to tell me your name, where you teach and what you teach and where you are in the process. Let's do a scale of 1 to 5. 1, you're just kind of thinking about it. 5, maybe you have already what's it called? Submitted, that's the word I'm looking for, a component. All right. And Ashley, you are first on my screen. I met you yesterday, so I promise I'm not picking on you. Tell us where you teach and what you teach and where you are 1 to 5.
Okay, so I work for the University of Montevallo, ALSDE. I'm a K-4 science and technology specialist. So I do candidate support, usually through the JSU in-service center. And so I just wanted to attend this session so that I could learn some more about this particular content area certification. And I certified, let's go with I renewed MOC in 2021. So a year early. So I guess that would be 2017.
So you are a early childhood generalist?
I am, yes.
Okay. All right. And Carol from Coleman County is up next.
I teach pre-cal and calculus. I've already completed the first component this summer.
All right. So you've taken the test.
Yes.
And so we'll put you down at a 2 on the scale of 1 and just beginning your portfolio adventure. All right. And I have Kiarika. Is that correct? Please correct me.
It's Kiarika. It's Kiarika. I
Okay.
teach at Carver High School. I teach geometry, Birmingham City School System.
Yay, geometry.
Yes. And I'm one of this year's Alabama scholarship recipients, NBCT. And I'm just starting. I'm excited.
All right, great. So glad you're here today. Diana.
Hi, I am an oldie. I certified in early adolescent mathematics in 2002. I taught at Fairhope Middle School, 7th grade math for 25 years. It was called Renewal back in 2012. I renewed at that point, but then I retired 3 years ago in 2019 before the window opened for me to do maintenance of certification. And so now, though, since retirement, I mentor teachers who are going through the process in Baldwin County schools and in Gulf Shores City schools for SAREC. I love doing that. And this is the first time I've been doing the boot camps virtually for a while that I've seen one on math.
Okay,
So
great.
Just
Great,
wanted
great,
to
great.
kind of brush up and see what all was
Hopefully
going on.
we'll have some nuggets here. If not, we're going to count on you to help support some of the other candidates here because the
That sounds
standards
good.
have not changed. We still
Right, but the biggest change is that component 4 has changed quite a bit since the time that I did it. So again, I'm always looking for information on ways to help candidates with component 4.
Absolutely. Well, welcome, Diana. Next on my screen is Terry. I think our paths may have crossed before, Terry.
Yeah, I believe you came to Auburn when we were one of our meetings there. So, and yeah, I teach Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 at Lynette High School. I have submitted component 2. That is all I've done so far. But seeing where we go from there.
All right, great. Glad you're here. Matt from Eufaula.
Hey, Matt, I teach at Eufaula High School, mathematical modeling, pre-cal and calculus, and I've done component 1 and component 3 and working on component 2 and 4 this year.
Okay, great. Welcome. Let's see. Diana, you moved, but we've already talked to you. There's Brad. Vanessa. Vanessa came on early. She may have stepped away. How about Casey? All right. Casey, if you're talking, we can't hear you, but if you're not, that's okay. Ashley.
I'm Ashley Boyd.
Okay, Ashley. There you
Ashley
go.
Boyd from. I'm Ashley Boyd from Morgan County. I teach 7th and 8th grade math at Kentucky School, and I originally started looking into NBCT for the teams that I was doing. I went ahead and did the certification, and so after I started looking into it, I decided I wanted to do this anyway, just to grow and become a better teacher. So,
Great.
learning.
So glad you're here. You were coming in and out, audio just a little bit. Getting a little feedback. If you'll mute yourself. Give me a thumbs up. I understand that you're there we go. You're STEM certified, but you are looking into national boards now. Okay. Good. All right. Anybody else? Brooke? Have you that needs to introduce themselves? I see Cassandra.
Hi.
Hey, Brooke.
I am not going to turn my video on because I have a 1-year-old. I am
Totally
wrestling this
understand.
morning. But I am a scholarship recipient, and I started also doing the Teams Act this year. I'll
Great.
be teaching 6th grade at Maddox Intermediate School, 6th grade math. And so I'm new to the process, but I have considered doing it for a little while. So I've researched a lot, but I was just getting my master's done first and just graduated. So now I'm on to the next endeavor.
Yay. Well, welcome, Brooke. And we're totally fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you don't turn your camera on, I promise.
Okay, thanks.
But feel free to unmute and ask questions or put something in the chat. Brad's going to be watching the chat for us. And he will interrupt me as well. Okay, Cassandra.
I said, whenever do vendors give gift like that unless you pay well? Oh, shit.
Cassandra, you're unmuted.
I'm here. I'm sorry, you all. I'm Cassandra Burton. I'm from, I teach in Sumter County at York West End Junior High School, 6th through 8th math. And I'm presently in Napa on vacation.
Oh, bless.
But I'm still here. So trying to get it all in. I didn't want to miss this.
Okay. Are you just beginning the process?
I'm a scholarship recipient also.
Great. Okay. Everybody's moved around on my screen. Who did I miss? Anybody that did not get a chance to introduce themselves? Okay. Jackie's, Lynette City.
Good morning. My name is Jacquees Cofield. I am a part of Lynette City Schools, where I teach at Lynette High School, primarily geometry, but I do also teach mathematical modeling as well as pre-calculus. I am signed up for Math EA. I'm a scholarship recipient. This is my 2nd year. Last year I submitted components 1 and 2.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, I don't see any hands raised, so I'm gonna go back and share my screen again, and we'll get started. Thank y'all all so much for coming and being a part of this session. You know, we always want to begin at the beginning, and there we go. Here are our objectives. We want to analyze and apply the NBCT math certification standards. And even if you've already submitted a component, I think it's always good to go back and revisit those standards. So we're going to do a little activity with that. We want to incorporate the architecture of accomplished teaching and the 5 core propositions. I really want to discuss writing because I don't know about you guys, but as a as a math person, sometimes writing can be a little bit of struggle for us. And I want to talk about some things dealing with writing, and then give everybody a chance to kind of brainstorm their next steps. So here is actually a quote from the Introduction to the Math Standards. So take a minute to read over that. And in the chat, I'd love for you to comment on what stands out to you when you read that quote. Unexamined assumptions. All right. I'm working on my wait time on Zoom. They tell me that we have to extend that a little bit. The how and the why. Okay, for those of you just coming in, we are looking at a quote from the Math Standards from the the National Board Math Standards, and we are looking for things that really stand out to us. And I want us to think about, oh, I agree, Brooke, the why and the how, the problem solving. And I think that's something you'll probably hear me say over and over again today. As math teachers, I think, I hope we are evolving. I hope we're getting better. I hope we're, as Matt says, focusing on that thinking and solving. We have moved past I do it, you do it, we do it. Here's the algorithm. Now y'all go do 50 of them. But focusing in on that how and on that why and all of the thinking and the solving and the discovering and all of the things involved in that. And that is our journey, and that is where we are moving toward. I love one of my favorite things is the person who's doing the talking is the person who's doing the learning. So we'll revisit that in a few minutes. But just take a minute to use this QR code to open up a new tab for the Candidate Information Center and allow a new tab to open up so that you can see this information center. A lot of you may already be very familiar with this page, but you need to bookmark this page. You need to be there and know where this page is. This is your cornerstone to come back to. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. And also put the link in the chat, just in case somebody didn't get that QR code. As you notice, this is the first time in returning candidate resources. And I know for those of you just getting started, this is oh so overwhelming, and you can use a whole ream of paper and multiple print cartridges to print all of these things. You do not need to print every single one of these. But the one thing that I think is one of the most important things for you to print, for you to have, for it to almost become your Bible over the next few years are your standards. So if everybody could open up this tab and scroll down to the bottom of their screen and choose Okay. You should get a drop down and choose mathematics. And then also, to be honest, the standards are the same for both. So even if you're still trying to decide if you're a 9th grade teacher and you're not sure if you're going to early adolescent or adolescent young adult, it doesn't really matter because they are the same. And here are your standards. So take just a minute to open up a new tab with your standards. And guys, I believe this is one of the most important places that we need to begin is with our standards. So I'm going to give everybody a second. If you have not, yay, thank you for the encouragement, Diana. That is so important. So if you have not, if you need a few more minutes, get that tab with your standards pulled up. Let me know in the chat, because we're going to do an activity with these in just a minute. All right, before we get into that activity, I want us to look at our architecture of accomplished teaching, because you are a lawyer. You are convincing the National Board Assessors that you are a accomplished teacher. That is your challenge. That is your goal with this process. And if we look at this architecture of accomplished teaching, science folks, it looks a little bit like a double helix. Everything is intertwined. But I love the idea of thinking of this as a lesson plan. The National Board has given you a lesson plan of where to start. All right. And as you're looking at this, I need somebody in the chat to tell me what is the very first thing, what in your lesson plan, where do you begin in your National Board journey? What is number one at the bottom of that double helix? Students, exactly. You begin with your students. That knowledge of students is so very, very important. So we begin with our knowledge of students, and then we work our way up, setting those worthwhile goals, implementing the instruction, evaluating student learning, reflecting on student learning. So after we've taught our lesson here in number 3, do we stop? Absolutely not. From 3, we move to 4, which is evaluating that learning. We don't just teach it and then stop. After we give the test, after we evaluate our student learning, do we stop there? No, we move on to reflecting on student learning and then setting our new high and worthwhile goals for these students at this time. Are your goals and objectives always exactly the same for every year in every class for every set of students? No. And so, and the other thing I like to point out about this double helix is the correlation to our 5 core propositions. And if you've ever heard Dr. Sibley speak, you've had to repeat these, and she makes sure everybody knows these 5 core propositions, but they fit perfectly in. And as a good math teacher, we see that we are color coordinated between, so we know which of our steps in the architecture go back to each of those 5 core propositions. Which proposition do you notice and do you notice is not in the architecture of accomplished teaching? Exactly, 5. It is, and is really throughout. You are a member of a learning community. From the beginning of knowing your students, you're checking in with the previous teachers as a part of the learning community, with your counselors, with checking those transcripts, those previous grades, those test scores, as you're meeting your goals. You're setting your goals, you're working with your vertical teams, those learning communities, you're knowing your parents, you're knowing how your students feel about math, all of those things about members of your learning communities is all throughout the entire architecture. So our drill 1 is we're going to take some time to read, study, and reflect. And this is what teachers should know and be able to do is a real focus on those 5 core propositions. So if this is the QR code you need, if you are really still considering those 5 core propositions, you can find those here. And now I want us to look at the standards. And the first 2, we are going to just kind of talk about for a minute. Committed to mathematics learning for all students. And take a minute to read that. And let's okay, what words stand out here? What do you see as you're reading this? Equitable treatment, right, Carol? Equitable. You know the word that stands out to me most? All. I wanted to put all in all caps. All students, not just the high flyers in your class, not even just the collaborative kiddos that are struggling a little bit, but everybody individually. Beautiful. I love that, because how often do we not, and I think we can learn a lot from our elementary schools here in their focus on the individual and where each individual is in the spectrum of learning their concept. So standard 1 is that commitment to the mathematics learning for all students, and take some time to read that. It gives you this is just a snippet, and then there's a description. And that's what I love about the way the National Board has put our standards out there, is they have allowed us to, they give you examples. For example, or you might see this, or what these look like in your classroom. Value, yes, the value of individuality and worth of each student, and thinking of those students individually and not as a whole. So that is standard number 1. Standard number 2 is more of a focus on content. And it actually, if you are looking at that whole standard, you can see that it talks about each of the different areas of math: numbers and operations, algebra and functions, geometry, trigonometry, discrete math, data analysis, and calculus. And as a person who spent a lot of time in geometry, for the Comp 1 knowledge of math, or for this standard, I had to go back and do some studying. And I had to go back and make sure, because the National Board is certifying you as an accomplished teacher for early adolescent, not just in the course you might happen to be teaching. So be sure to take some time, and it really focuses in on their expectation in each of those areas. So now, as we get into 3 through 10, there are 10 standards. What I want us to do is we're going to go to a Jamboard. And a Jamboard is just a way to brainstorm and think about things. Brad, if you can put the link to the Jamboard in the chat, that would be great. And everybody can open up a new tab with their Jamboard. If you've never done a Jamboard, the way that a Jamboard works is you can, I'm seeing people join, so everybody come on and get into the Jamboard, is you pull a sticky note from the menu bar on the left, and you can type, you can change the color, and you can type your comment in and then hit save, and it will show up as a sticky note on the board. And then you can move it around, you can make it bigger, you can turn it, you can do all kinds of things with it. But the way that we're going to utilize Jamboard today is I'm going to break you out into breakout rooms. And if you look at the arrow at the top of the Jamboard, you can see that I have one page for each of the standards. And what I'd like to do is, and you can see that if you are in breakout room number 2, I want you to go to that, go to the standards and go to, what did I say? You are going to be focusing in on standard number 4. So as you do standard number 4, you and whoever is in your room will read over and look at standard 4. And when you see things like, for instance, students might appreciate symbolic notation if they accessed history of its evolution easily on the web. For example, teachers teaching experimental versus theoretical probability might use a calculator or computer software program to do random number generators. As you read through this and you think of examples of things you do in your classroom, I want you to grab a Post-it note and put it on your Jamboard page so that we can have this and kind of go through and talk about it. And this, hopefully, as you're reading through, will bring to mind things that you do, excuse me, in your classroom. And just come over and double click, grab a sticky note, type in something you do for as you are reading this. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And Ashley, can I pick on you? All right. When you go to your breakout room, how do you know which standard you have?
The bottom of the Jamboard frame, it says the number of the breakout room, and so I'll look at the top where it says the standard that I'm going to be looking at.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, I'm using my talk moves here that I learned from my elementary friends. All right, Carol, can you tell me where you're going to find your standards?
They're going to be in the link that you sent us.
All right, so you're going to have 2 tabs. You're going to have a Jamboard tab, and you're going to have the standards tab. So Ashley told us which breakout room had which standard. Carol told us where we're going to find the standards. All right, who can tell me what they're going to do on that Jamboard with the standard they're assigned. All right, Miss Smith from Birmingham, tell us what we're going to do.
So as we read through the standards, and we see examples that's listed, we can, you would like for us to think of examples of things that we've done in our classroom, so that we can, practice thinking about what we do in our classroom, that's similar to what you guys require of us.
That is, thank you for being brave and sharing and listening. So there are 10 standards. We've already talked about 1 and 2. We probably won't be able to do all 3. I'm going to put 4 people in each breakout room, and then I will pop in and out. So let's see, I'm going to assign automatically, and I'm going to, let's just do 4 breakout rooms, and we will, so that will allow us to get to practice doing standard 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm not seeing how to set my time. Let's see. Yep, assign automatically. Okay. My clock says 10:31. So let's go about 10 minutes to allow you to talk to each other and allow you to have some time to ponder, to think about your standard, and then to brainstorm some ideas in your classroom. So I'll be popping in and out over the next 10 minutes, and then I will also be, and I'll also bring us back together at 10:42. Okay, everybody good? Here we go. Here's the time. I found it. I just needed to click one more. So I'm setting it for 10 minutes, and you will get a timer with about 10 seconds to go. Here we go. You may see an invitation that you have to accept. Hey, friend, I accidentally hit leave the meeting and still leave the breakout room.
Oh no, I just saw you pop back on, so I was going to ask you, it gave us a message to keep the breakout rooms open or
Open,
closed?
yes. I was gonna keep them open for about 5 more minutes.
Okay, so keep them open and I'm going to make you a co-host again.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Carol, which
Okay,
group?
I'm confused because the timer went down to 0. But then
Right.
when we leave room, we left the meeting.
Okay, I gave you about 5 more minutes. I should have sent a message, but I made a mistake when I was leaving a room and left the whole meeting.
Okay.
So
Well,
I can reassign you. Which group were you in?
we were in room 3, and then
Oh.
we figured out we were doing the wrong standard. We were supposed to be doing learning environment, but we got that done.
Okay, great. I'm so impressed. Okay, Carol, I'm about to put you back into 3 for just a minute or two.
Okay.
Katrina, which one were you in?
Oh, I was in group 3.
3. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
And Tiffany, you were one of our newbies. What room were you in?
3.
3. Okay, y'all should be back.
Oh, okay. Let's go back. Okay.
Thank you, my South Alabama friend.
Yes, do you want me to send a message? I have one typed. We're going to add about 5 more minutes in breakout rooms. Do you want me to
Yes,
broadcast
that
that?
is beautiful.
Okay.
I was just about to do that when I got kicked out of my own meeting.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally my fault. They should not put the leave meeting and leave breakout room buttons so close together.
Yes, I agree.
And I have the ability to close the room, so I should be okay now.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
I just broadcasted a message to everyone.
Okay, you're the best.
Thanks. You are.
I owe you a prize. I don't have any virtually.
Thanks. Everything's going great.
All your hats are fabulous.
Same to you. Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
I'm actually double teaming, actually triple.
Okay, you go. We got this.
Okay, bye.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I don't know if that was a long 5 minutes or a short 5 minutes. True confession, when I was leaving breakout room number 1, there was another button there that said leave meeting. I may have accidentally hit leave meeting instead of leave the breakout room. So that's okay. I got back in and and I was going to broadcast a message about extra 5 minutes, but I think we are all back now. So what I'd like to do is share our screen. We've got some great, my screen, we've got some great Jamboard comments out there. And I think I can make this full screen, maybe, or maybe not. No, never mind. We'll just look at it just like this. So our team, our breakout room number 1, talk to us about some of the things you do to help learn about your students. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger.
This is Carol. I was confused about which one I was supposed to do. So if you were in this breakout room, I thought since I was in breakout room 3, I was going to do knowledge of students. So I put some of my stuff on there. So I'm sorry to that group.
That's okay. I don't think they mind.
Well,
I'll
Suzanne,
speak.
my first
Oh.
time seeing the Jamboard because I'm working for myself on it this time. But some of the things that I've done, and it may be a repeat of what's on the Jamboard already, but things that I do to get to know my students at the beginning of the school term. I have a survey, getting to know you. One of it is just a general survey. It's not really personal, just like or too in depth, but just pretty much like, what's your favorite color? What do you like? How do you like to read? Just general things that to help me to appeal to them. But throughout the school term, I continue to give them these surveys to get to know them a little bit more about their families. And then also I send out something to their parents as to help me to get to know their child, how I can reach them best, so which way they learn best as well. In addition to that, also I like to attend the different games because they're in extracurricular activities. So the more they see me, the more comfortable they perhaps may feel with me with sharing information as well.
Exactly. And guess what? You may be sitting next to mom and dad at that ball game too. That always helps as well. So great. Anything else from the breakout room? Great examples here of knowledge of students and things that you are doing to get your, not just get to know your students and mathematically and where they are in their mathematical knowledge, but also getting to know them personally and getting to know their affect, how they feel about math. All right, let's move on to our next one. Oh, wow. Knowledge of teaching practice. We may, you guys, breakout room number 2 may need to have a second page. You guys got a lot of things out here, a lot of examples of ways that you, specific examples of ways that you demonstrate your knowledge of your teaching practice and the things that you saw within the standards and examples that came to mind of what you do. Was there one, is there any quick share out? We'll take time to go back. You will have access to this. Just click that big arrow and you can go into this Jamboard and read these, or they spur ideas in your mind. We also had a group looking at learning environment. What kinds of things that you do in your classroom, and have these written in the margins, Post-it notes in your standards, so that when you're doing your writing, you can go back and think, oh, I forgot to mention that we set an environment that it's okay to be wrong. Oh, I forgot about the arrangement of my room, or using Desmos or graphing for those kids, those techie kids, or allowing them to explain how they work their problem. All of those things, and you want to be sure and mention all of these things within your writing. We had a group working on thinking mathematically and ways that you encourage your students to model, to experiment, to classify, all of those things that you do for standard number 6. And then I had one group that jumped over and grabbed standard number 7 as well. Proficiency skills, that metacognition, observations, checklist. You know, if you are just doing, you know, kind of keeping in your mind a checklist, you might want to have one that you could scan and take a picture of for evidence, and exit slips, all of those things. Don't just think of assessment as a test or a summative test. It can be all kinds of other formative things that maybe aren't even pencil and paper. Some are, some aren't. And it can be something like an observation or a checklist or a gallery walk where groups of students have put different problems around the room. All of those things are involved in assessments. Now, we didn't have quite enough folks to get into reflection and growth, communities and families. What are you doing to connect with your communities and families? This goes directly back into knowledge of students. As you're doing that, get to know you, let the parents tell you what they would like for. I loved allowing parents to share with me what they would like for me to know about their kiddo. They, had a great experience in math in 5th grade, but struggled in 6th. They really connected in with this teacher in the way she did these things. Parents, you want your parents to be on the same screen with you, same team with you. I was thinking about screens. Professional communities, not just your math department. You have a professional community with all your 9th grade teachers, with all the teachers that taught your students previously, and the vertical teams that you're sending them to next. Think about all the different. You have a professional learning community right here today. Begin your professional learning communities with other people that are teaching, people you meet at ACTM. All of those things are involved with your learning community. So I'm going to head back now to our PowerPoint, and I'm going to buzz through these slides because those are the ones we've just looked at our Jamboard on and talked about and looked at. Sorry. All right, this is what your standards should look like. They should be dog-eared. They should be highlighted. They should be underlined. You should have examples in the corner and Post-it notes on top. And the time and effort you spend within your standards is worth it. Very much well worth it, because all of the prompts that you will be reading and answering and working on come from the standards. All of the rubrics that you will be working with and looking at and beginning with the end in mind come from the standards. So I always like to spend time on the standards. All right, before we move on to drill 2, Brad, do we have any comments that I need to speak to? Or does anybody?
I have not seen anything in the chat room other than Dr. Shields said that was exactly what her standards look like.
Yay! Okay, so please.
Even the coffee stains, Suzanne. That's what made me laugh the most. Is mine had just coffee stains all over.
Those weren't mine. I forgot to take a picture of mine and I couldn't find them to take a picture. But you must, and I know there are some people already within the process, and if you've taken Comp 1, that is mainly focused on that knowledge of content. But as you're working on portfolio, go Diane's, or color coded.
Even in your standards, if you are writing down the lessons that touch on those standards, then that's easy ways to go back and say, hey, I might want to make sure that I video that lesson for component 3 or something.
Beautiful, Brad, because certain components are correlated to certain standards. And when I saw, just for an example, when I saw that assessment standard and I was trying to think of different ways I assessed, I thought of a geometry lesson where I used patty paper and kids did, folding within, with triangles, and then they moved on and did some stuff with old school geometry sketchpad, which is now Desmos, before we ever did a summative assessment. So all those different ways that I assessed and those cooperative learning activities that we did within that were part of my assessment. So that lesson coming to mind, and when something else comes to mind, grab those standards, throw a Post-it note on there, those lessons that correlate with that, where you have the best evidence. And that is the next thing I want to talk about. Drill 2, we've talked about reflecting, looking at the standards, focusing in on those things. But the next thing I want us to look at is choosing wisely. All right. I just closed my chat. I'm going to want to open it back up. What do you notice about these 4 pictures? No group seating. Students are in rows. Teachers are in front. And guys, I'm just going to call us out as math teachers. How many of us are sages on the stage? How many of us, I remember the very first video that my mentor looked at, she said, "You're doing all the talking, Suzanne. Or do you not ever let your kids talk to each other?" And even looking at the progress of the progression of these pictures, that upper left, we've got oil wells still. That's when I was in school, still in the desk. Then we progressed to a chalkboard, and then we moved down to an overhead projector, and then a projector from a computer. But who is the center of attention everywhere? Teacher centered. Exactly right, Brooke. No, you don't see any. You notice the lack of student engagements. All eyes on the teacher. So when you are choosing your and I'm not saying that there aren't times in your classroom that it needs to be 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me, but do not, you will, and I think I can say this with confidence, national boards will not consider you an accomplished teacher if the camera is on you and you are the only one talking in your video, or you have chosen a student work that is just checked marked right or wrong. So let's think about that, choosing wisely. Comp 2, we've got a couple of people that have submitted Comp 2. When you start looking and analyzing Comp 2 and looking at those directions, it is 1 unit of study, 2 activities, and 2 students' work. And I pulled some comments from that 2 activities. Are your students engaged in thinking and reasoning mathematically? When you choose those activities, are they from 2 distinct points? If you have within your unit of study, you have discovery, you have practice, you have application, you have review, are you going to choose 2 pieces of student work from practice? Or are you going to choose a discovery activity, and are you going to choose maybe a practice and where you are being able to see it? And this one, are students documenting their mathematical reasoning? You have to have evidence where students are documenting their mathematical reasoning. It can't be answer C unless you are having them show their work, showing their reasoning, and then you are actually commenting on that, highlighting it, saying, you know, can we rethink this? Or, you know, where was the mistake made? Let's go back and talk about this. So all of those things need to be involved when you are choosing those activities. You have to be sure that you can show evidence of your students thinking and reasoning mathematically and documenting their mathematical understanding. When analyzing your student work, do your two students represent different challenges for you? Think about that. Are you going to necessarily choose two students that both have ADHD or both have 504s or IEPs? Are you going to necessarily choose, you know, two high flyers that always make an A? You could choose, you know, two students that maybe struggle, but struggle in different ways. One student that just goes straight to the answer, but doesn't think through the process, or another student that puts down so many steps that they get lost. So they have to represent different challenges for you as a teacher, and also their responses give an opportunity to demonstrate your assessment of their understanding. How are you assessing their understanding? So in my work with math candidates, I have found that both of these things can be something that we have to really, really think about, brainstorm, make sure in Comp 2 that you very carefully choose your activities and also choose which students. And there are, as you read it and study your directions, there are some very distinct, which student should I choose? Which activities should I choose? All right. Anybody have anything they would like to add about Comp 2 and this idea of choosing wisely? Because we have a couple of veterans in our group, and I would love evidence. Evidence is all important. Yes.
I'll offer something here in choosing. Summer is a great time to be working through your component information and reading through it, getting really familiar with it. Again, always going over your standards, because again, as you read these directions, you can think to yourself, what lessons do you teach? What units do you teach that you think best lend themselves to letting you show that you're accomplished in this area? So again, you know, select an area where you feel the most confident. And, you know, because again, if you feel confident, that's going to come through. You know, you're trying to show evidence that you are an accomplished teacher. So summer is a great time. Be working through and familiarizing yourself with the instructions and the standards, and start doing some preliminary planning on what lessons and units you think would work for you.
Agree 100%. Thank you for adding that, Diane. Now let's think about Comp 3. Comp 3 will involve 2 videos from different units, different formats, and different strategies. So let's think about that. And a lot of candidates struggle thinking about different formats. Well, I have them in groups. We do small groups all the time, or I have our large groups or one-on-one. Excuse me. Think about the, and I think a big piece of this is you're explaining it, why you chose to do, is this a discovery activity in small groups? Are they moving around to different stations and doing, at each different station, they're doing either a different part of a problem, or they have a different problem at each different station? Is this a challenge problem? Or is this a large group where you are working them through a concept and you're stopping periodically and allowing them to process that with their elbow partner, turn around and do an example problem with the person behind them, and then you're moving around and assessing? Or is it, hey, you have a processing partner that's your, Marzano calls them clock partners, an ad hoc group where you go and move across the room and talk about it. Or you have 4 corners where they move and they go from large to small. But that whole, it's generally a large group, but be very, very careful on your large group format, that it's not just you talking, or it's not just, and that's the next thing, different strategies. It's not just student to teacher and teacher to student. Even within your large group format, do you have strategies that allow the students to talk to each other? And that is something, if you aren't doing, you need to start doing the day school starts, and you need to start practicing it. And by the time you film your video, you need to be very comfortable with that.
We do have a question down here in the chat if you want to answer that. And maybe you've already addressed it in what you're saying. I'm not sure.
Okay.
If they do an activity as group or with a partner, can we use that as work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can use, can you use that in Comp 2? Is that the question, Carol, as student work?
Yes.
I think, and go back and double check the instructions, but I think you're going to want to have individual students that offer, that offer you a different challenge.
Okay.
And ways that you individualize that work. If we think about Comp 2, the title of it is differentiation in instruction.
Okay.
So now maybe you recognize that, and I apologize, all my examples are geometry. You recognize within a geometry session, a geometry question, that a particular student was struggling with an 8th grade concept. Maybe that you're working with, what am I thinking about? You're working with special right triangles, and you begin the lesson, because 8th grade no longer does simplifying radicals. As you're simplifying radicals and teaching them how to do that, you notice some of your students, or one particular student, doesn't know their perfect squares. So maybe within an assignment, you see that that's their struggle, not knowing what their perfect squares are, or they're struggling with simplifying square roots. And so you make a note of, because you notice that, you added in a bell ringer the next day where they practice their simplifying square roots, or you had that particular person come back for some remediation in this area, or what you do for individual instruction. You notice this student, not necessarily making the same mistakes, but they were an early finisher. So you added a challenge problem for them within there. And it doesn't mean they can't be completing it within a group, but I think you have to be looking at individual students. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then with your videos, any questions or anything to discuss within the videos? And double check me on this, but if you teach pre-cal and algebra and you're AYA, one of your videos could be from one class and one from another class.
Okay.
That is something that we've been discussing when we do our Comp 3 sessions. I've actually got one coming up here at 1 o'clock. But yes, they may be from different classes. It does not have to be from the same class. So you could take two geometry classes, that second and third period, And you could do that, or if you had a second period geometry and a third period pre-calculus, you could do that as well.
And those of you who teach multiple subjects know that different age groups of students and different content lend themselves toward different formats and different strategies. A strategy that you use with ninth graders might, because you have knowledge of your students, might not necessarily work with with seniors. So think about that, and that could be very beneficial to you as you are very carefully, wisely choosing your groups of students, choosing what lessons to video and those kinds of things. Okay. So our next drill is writing. And I really wanted to take a few minutes to focus in on writing, to think about writing. The other Suzanne that presented with me was a literacy person, and this was her idea, and this is how she works with her math people, thinking about it like a puzzle. You know, you've got all those pieces, you've got all those ideas, you just have to fit them logically together. And I thought that was a really great idea for us analytical thinkers, is just, you know, start with a bulleted list, start with those questions, answering the questions. And I think that's a big piece of it that I struggled with a little bit, and that some of my candidates have, is, and my AP friend says AP stands for answer the prompt. And I'm going to try to come up with some, you know, passing and becoming a national board certified teacher is answering the question. And it wasn't that my math teacher candidates, you know, go off on tangents talking about other things, but within each prompt, there may be 4 or 5 questions, and they got so excited about one of the questions that they didn't answer the other one. So please, please, please read those questions. Make sure you answer the questions as you are writing. I thought this was a great idea. If you struggle with getting words on that piece of paper, Suzanne suggested grabbing a voice recorder and just kind of talk through, even have a friend with you or a colleague, and talk through the things you do, answer those questions, and then kind of listen to yourself back and go back and, you know, why you do it. And providing that evidence. We keep talking a lot about evidence, that painting a picture. The assessor only gets a very short glimpse in your classroom. So you want to let your words show. They should be able to close their eyes and visualize what it looks like within the classroom, within your classroom. And I love this. One before we get to that, what kinds of writing, some things are just forms, guys. So you're just going into those brackets and typing in what grades you teach, what age levels. This is a just the facts kind of thing, but be thinking about mandates. You know, what state or district mandates do you have? Do you follow the state course of study? Does your district have a pacing guide? Do you have, you know, staffing issues? Are you block scheduling? Are you, you know, this contextual information form is basically a big picture school. And then once you get down to class level, then you start talking about your classes. So this idea of, you know, how many class periods do you have? Are you in desks? Do you have tables and chairs? What kind of technology do you have? All of those things are more of a school level. What does your school look like? And then when you begin to have other forms about instructional planning, the unit of instruction, the goals, and not necessarily, and then you might talk about within your writing, this was my instructional goal, but for these particular students, we just looked at this piece. What lesson, what format? and materials and resources. So all of these different forms you fill out are helping to paint that picture for your assessor. Then you get into your written commentary. Why, this is from Comp 2. Why did you choose these students? Back to those instructional challenges. And it's okay to use their name. You can use student A and student B, or you can have Sally and Joe. I chose Sally because these are the instruction. And as you know, I love the idea of putting it into a Word doc and then just typing and answering each question, then taking the question out. But be sure that you repeat the question. Be sure that you say, my particular challenges for Sally were, and then tell it. It's important to know about this student to understand and interpret her. You need to know that Sally is visually impaired, therefore her writing is very large. Whatever you need to describe them as a learner. How did you know this? You know that they came in and I think about, just for example, one year, I love this example. One year I taught geometry kiddos that had algebra A and B. So, and their algebra A and B teacher had set them in straight rows and they had never spoken aloud in that classroom for 2 years. So when they came to my class, math was the worst part of their day. And they did not enjoy math. They thought math was a terrible, horrible thing. So I needed to let my assessor know the unique characteristics of those students, of that class in general, but also of these students as learners and as learners of mathematics and their affect in terms of mathematics. And then what did I do to solve those problems in looking at those? And that actually what I was just talking about may have been better for the instructional context than for my particular 2 students. So all of those things are important. Evidence equals examples. Giving examples. As you are analyzing that student work, on number 2, you can see that Sally did this, and this was my response. On problem 4, she did this, and this is why I responded this way, and this was my follow-up to that. Anytime you can give evidence when you're doing your videos, at 1 minute and 11 seconds, Joey in the back of the room, in the black shirt, raised his hand and said this. All of those things are evidence that you are giving. And these are the questions when I read someone's submission and I'm giving feedback. These are some of the questions I ask most often. Why did you do this? You did it because you noticed something. You did it because they had struggled previously. You know, why did you choose this sequence? Don't just say, I did this, this, and this, but tell why. How did you know? This class struggles with this concept. How do you know they struggle with this concept? And I heard a question yesterday that I think really was a great question. It was, so what? All right, here's your, you do this, you know this, now so what? What are you going to do with it? Thinking about that, the different types of writing, your descriptive writing, your analytic writing, your reflective writing, and how those correspond. All right, one more thing on writing, and I'm sharing these pitfalls with you because these are things that I have seen in writing in math candidates. The first pitfall that I think we sometimes fall into is being a soapbox orator. You've got this soapbox and you want to talk about your personal views and feelings, and I can't believe these kids don't know anything, and they've come into my class and they are you know, gloom and doom, and COVID is killing education. Guys, you need to be positive. You need to keep that can-do attitude. These, you know, the students in your class may have been at home in 7th grade and didn't do any math at all, but you're going to get them, you're going to teach them 7th grade and 8th grade in your class, and you are there, and that whole can-do attitude, and that's what an accomplished teacher does. So don't fall into that pit of woe is me and gloom and doom. Another pitfall that we see a lot in teacher writing is the invisible teacher. I want to just read a little excerpt from you. The students were seated in groups of 4. First, they brainstormed the charted ideas to tackle the problem, and then they selected a specific strategy to use. Each group developed a plan and shared it when we met together at the end of the period. Was fairy dust sprinkled? How did the students notice it in groups of 4? How did they know where their group was? Why were those groups chosen? The invisible teacher, you know, doesn't give the teacher credit for what's going on. You chose these groups. I assigned these groups with attention to diversity for mixing student abilities, learning styles, and genders. I put them into groups. I chose these groups intentionally for these reasons. I directed the brainstorming. When time was up on brainstorming, I raised my hand because they knew that was the signal for them to raise their hand. We recorded those things. We talked about them. We discussed them together. All of those, make sure, you know, I think we don't want to seem braggadocious. I did this, I did this, I did this in our writing, but you are giving evidence of the things you do. So obviously you have to have those I statements in there. And thinking in terms of writing, if you go to those in-service center sessions, guys, they are amazing. Those facilitators will give you, and it will give you resources, you know, especially the books by Bobby Faulkner. She has sentence stems in there. If you don't know how to get started in your writing, look at those sentence stems. They are great. Go to those writing sessions. If you're the only math person in there, that's okay. And get with a mentor. Let someone read your writing. The next one is the telepath. And this is the one, you know, tell the evidence, why it's successful. Don't make, I want to put an Easter egg, an Easter bunny here. Do not make your assessor read your mind. I tell people all the time, I've been married to my husband for 40 years. He still, to this day, cannot read my mind. I have to tell him things that I'm thinking. So this assessor that's never met you certainly cannot read your mind. So don't assume that everybody knows this. Don't expect the assessor to connect the dots. Say it, put it down in your, even if it's something very simple that you think every teacher knows and does, write it down. And the last one is just that philosopher. Don't start philosophizing about what all students need, or I believe in differentiated instruction, or the state of education today. National Board wants to know about you. They want to know about what's going on in your classroom, and they want you to give them evidence of your accomplished teaching. So have I said this enough times? Evidence equals examples. All right, Brad, how's the chat? Are we good? Timestamp.
The chat. Yeah, there's not really anything else that's been added to the chat. I added a few things in there. I think timestamps, like you were talking about, they're a great way, not just to say that you do something, but you're actually also proving that you do something there. And then you were talking about, you know, getting kind of caught up in your own feelings and how you think about things and all that stuff. Just make sure that you take out any bias that you may have. because you don't want to come across as negative, number one. Number two, also, if you flip that to the alternative, if you just come across just so unbelievably positive about maybe a certain test or a certain, anything, you may get an assessor and we would like to think that they wouldn't do this, but they may not like that certain, method that you're talking about. And they may also dock you points for that. So you just want to make sure that you try to remain neutral and remain, with no bias whatsoever throughout your written commentary.
Thank you for adding that, Brad. I appreciate it so much. And I love what Diana added in too. Stay away from I believe, I feel, I think. And that evidence and that timestamp of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that piece of evidence. But at the same time, go watch those Atlas videos. Your in-service center can give you access to those as well. And read that commentary. They are
Bobby
not
Faulkner's books.
Yes. They are not expecting it to be perfect. Absolutely not. The main thing they want you to be is reflective. If in that video you notice that I notice I tend to call on girls because I want those girls to not think they can't do math. And sometimes I forget to call on the boys. And if I notice that and I reflect on that and I see that and I say that in my writing, I noticed that, or I noticed that someone was not engaged. Next time I'm going to be more intentional in what group I put that person in, or I'm going to be more intentional in randomly choosing students to speak or giving hand signals on who has those, and not always calling on a gender specific. So the next thing I want us to do is just take a few minutes to brainstorm and think about where you are in the process and what are your next steps. And you don't necessarily have to put this in the chat, but if you have a Post-it note by you where you are, or if you're driving, we have a couple of folks that are driving in their cars. I want you to just think about, okay, I've completed Comp 1. Now I want to dive in. What are your next steps? Think about timelines. Think about where you want to go from here. I've got a great lesson that I want to pull that student work and do Comp 2 this fall, or I'm really have a great video I want. We haven't talked a lot about Comp 4, but what are some of those assessment things that I'm doing? Are there some things that, and somebody in the chat talked about when they were going through their standards, they use different color highlighters of what I'm doing well, what I need to improve. Are there things that we need to improve? Do I need to put, do I not, is my assessment something that I need to, focus in on in my professional learning and improve the way I do my assessment and do Comp 4 last? Do I need to work on some things, professional development, being a part of a learning community? What or is there a big push at our school with ELL students? And that's a need I know we have, and I want to be a part of that initiative. So I want to jump right in on Comp 4. Thinking about what are your next steps? Where are you going to go from here? And I'm going to be quiet for a moment and allow you to think about some of those kinds of things. Okay, because I'm not good at wait time, I had to put on a little study hall music to allow everybody to think, and I didn't want y'all to hear me breathing. A couple of folks have shared. I think Brooke is really, does that mean comp 3, Brooke? Casey shared with us that she's completed 1 and 2. She's going to really focus in on 4 this year. These are all decisions that you and a mentor can help you work on and help you think about. But as we're closing, I hope that that this is giving you some encouragement, giving you some tools, giving you some things to do. We looked at the 5 core propositions and remembering to those in your accomplished architecture of accomplished teaching, those 3 styles of writing. Here are just some things. I've given you some things you can tell yourself if you do get discouraged or you feel like you can't do this. Please, just read the directions one more time. If you get confused, just answer 1 prompt at a time. I have no doubt you can figure this out. You guys are accomplished teachers. You are working with students every day, making a difference in students' lives. You're not alone in this process. I know you can do this. Please, those of you that are just getting started, it is not easy. It is a challenge, but it will make you a better teacher. And it is the one thing that I did in my 35-year career that made the most difference for me, that changed my mindset in terms of reflecting on my teaching and asking myself the question, how does what I'm doing in the class affect my students' learning? And it took me away from content. Content is super important, but it helped me shift my focus from content to students. Now, that doesn't mean I ignore content, but focusing in on that pedagogy. I passed geometry in 1977. My job is to teach my students how to do that same geometry. Here are revisiting our objectives. Hopefully this was helpful to you and we accomplished those objectives. Take a minute to connect in. We do have an Alabama NBCT math Facebook page that you are welcome to join. The Alabama NBCT network, you can put a question out there, and before I can even read the question, there have been 2 or 3 different answers. So be sure to connect socially. Our social person on the network board is amazing. You see opportunities out there all the time. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody again. And in case you didn't catch it, I'm going to put I'll do it to everybody, make sure everybody can see my email address. But let me just say, I can't type and talk at the same time. There we go. Let me just say that I appreciate y'all being here, and you're welcome to email me, but let me point you to your in-service center. Every in-service center in this state, our ALSDE folks are amazing. They are putting out sessions and writing conferences, writing retreats, and doing amazing things with teachers in your area. So please watch for those, email your director, go to those websites. See, almost every website I've visited has a link to National Board Certification and all of the things that they are doing to help support you guys. And special thanks to South Alabama. They graciously offered their Zoom today. All right. Oh, 3 minutes early. Questions things that we can, anybody, okay, we have a raised hand. Yes. You have the floor.
Yes, Suzanne, I have a question. I'm contemplating doing component 4 this year. And for a professional learning need, I'm unfamiliar with the Lexile scores or interpreting their scores. And so I noticed that in component 4, well, let me back up. First, I was teaching geometry. Geometry in the past had been offered to 10th graders at my school, but last year they started with introducing it to 9th graders. So now I'm now a 9th grader teacher. And with getting to know my students, I will look at their ACAP scores. And I think in their ACAP scores, it was interpreted as their Lexile. So my question is, would attending a Lexile workshop will be adequate or good enough for you Lexile scores if I'm as a professional learning need? I'm just curious what kind of example professional learning needs.
It's recognizing not only a personal need, but also now that and meeting that need, but then also within your learning community. Are all your 9th grade teachers high school teachers and they don't understand the ACAP and interpreting those ACAP scores are going to be important to you guys. So you get with a counselor and you work with them and maybe get some sessions for your 9th grade teachers together and lead those sessions and then talk about how you're taking those scores and helping your students in your classroom. That whole idea of the professional need is, and Brad, correct me if you're wrong, is not just your personal need, but a need you see within your professional community.
Right. I don't know that I can really kind of comment as to whether you should or should not use that. You kind of know a lot better along the lines of what you need and what your school needs. But whatever you do have to show student impact. As long as you can show student impact, who's to say that it wouldn't work? But just keep in mind that whatever you do go out there and learn, or whatever you do as a student need, it must show student impact.
Yes, thank you, Brad. I think that's super important. And yeah, taking that and being able to say, okay, if that was the need that you recognize, and we did in-services and we learned together and we applied that and we saw a difference in how we were teaching geometry and how these kids were learning. We were able to find their gaps and be able to fill those gaps through these things. And then they helped our students in this area. All right. Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Brad, is there anything you need to tell everybody? Attendance, all that kind of stuff. Are we good?
So I have nothing else. Just make sure that you do the attendance that was listed there. Go ahead and make sure that you go through the Power School process and all that stuff, because I think you do have to fill out a survey in order to get the credit. I think that's the way that all professional development now works, but you did a fantastic job.
Brad, will you grab that? We've had a few people that, because of their internet, have come in and out. Will you throw that attendance link into the chat one more time before we shut everything down?
I will.
Just in case somebody missed it. And I can't do it because I got kicked.
You are fine. Here is the first one is going to be attendance. I apologize. I am coughing right now. The second, yep, I just got kicked out, or did I get? I don't think I got kicked out.
No, I said no. I
think I accidentally clicked the link. And then here is the link for Power Schools, which is True North Logic. Who would have thought that you'd use True North Logic for Power Schools?
All right. Thank y'all. Have a fabulous year and good luck to everybody, no matter where you are in this process. And I just want to leave you with, you are not alone. Seek out support, seek out mentors, seek out folks to help you and assist you along your journey, and it will well be worth it. All right. Y'all have a great day. You're welcome, Carol.